The range was loud, metal clinking, rubber mats squeaking, people shouting instructions over the muffled thud of earmuffs and gunfire. Everyone was suited up like they were in a movie. Tactical gloves, polished goggles, $1,000 rifles with neon stickers from sponsors no one had ever heard of. She didn't fit in. She walked in slow, quiet, no sunglasses, no tactical vest. It's just old jeans, boots covered in dirt from her truck's floorboard, and a soft flannel shirt that had probably seen more sunrises than these kids had ever woken up for. Some of them laughed. One guy nudged his buddy and grinned. "Looks like somebody's grandma got lost on the way to bingo." Another one leaned against the wall and whispered, "You think she knows what end of the gun is which?" But she didn't react. She just walked to lane 7, opened a scratch tub, cased with a broken latch, and laid it gently on the table. The inside of the case looked as weathered as she did, but clean. Clean in the way only people who deeply respect their tools ever bother with. Inside was a modest .22 to target pistol. Not flashy, not shiny, no red dot sights, no compensator, no cosmetic mods, just solid, serious metal. The range officer walked over, trying not to smirk. "Ma'am, spectators have to stay behind the barrier." She handed him a piece of paper, creased, worn, signed. He read it once. Then again, his smile dropped. "Wait, you're Eva McKinney?" Someone overheard. The laughter from a few feet away quieted just a little. That name. It rang faint bells, like a song people remembered but couldn't quite name. Eva didn't say anything. She just stepped up. The champion, Brock Tanner, stood nearby with his arms crossed. Early 30s, cocky, tall, sharp beard, gold medallion around his neck, 5 years running as the regional winner. People listened when he spoke. He leaned over toward her. "Sure you know what you're doing. These targets don't clean themselves." She didn't answer. She just loaded her pistol, took a slow breath, and raised it. The buzzer sounded. 12 shots, 12 explosions, and then silence. The screen above the lane flickered and then turned a bright green. A dot appeared on the diagram of the target. Dead center, then another, then another. 12 red dots, each perfectly clustered in the bullseye. The room went silent. One man spilled his coffee. A few jaws dropped. Kid in the back said, "No way, ... No." The scoreboard lit up. New record. Eva McKinney, 120.0012 of 12 center. Rings. She lowered the pistol slowly, like she was setting down a child. Nobody laughed. Now, but this wasn't where her story started. Not even close. A year earlier. In a quiet little town miles away, she was just a waitress. The kind of woman who knew every customer's favorite order and always made sure the sugar shaker was full. She drove a rusty pickup and wore the same denim jacket year-round. Most people never asked her more than how her morning was. She didn't mind. In the evenings, after wiping down the counters and wishing the dishwasher good night, she drove down a dusty road that wound behind the hills and parked near a row of pine trees. Behind those pines, behind her tiny trailer, she had built a makeshift range, just her, a wooden bench, a target cut from an old highway sign. She shot every single day. Rain, shine, snow. No one ever saw her. It's not because she was hiding. Because no one cared enough to look. But Eva remembered. She remembered her father's voice from decades ago, echoing in her ears. Shooting's not about bullets. It's about breathing. Calm, patience. You don't shoot to win. You shoot to feel the shot. Leave your hand like a truth you can't unsay. She was 14 when he died. A logging accident. All he left her was his old .22 and a box of hand-loaded rounds in a coffee tin. She still kept that tin in her truck's glove box. That's when the shooting stopped for a while. Then, life swallowed her whole. Until the diner's old TV showed a segment on the regional shooting finals. Brock Tanner was grinning in his sponsor gear, holding his gold-plated pistol like it was made of diamonds. Something in Eva clicked. She picked up the form online that night, printed it at the library, signed her name in ballpoint pen. At her first tryout, people looked at her like she was someone's lost aunt. Even the lady at the sign-in desk chuckled and said, "You sure this is your division?" Eva just handed over the form. She placed fourth that day. Fourth out of 87. But her score was conveniently lost in the final review. Photo, no mention. No callback. One of the judges said it under his breath. She's not marketable. No brand appeal. Eva heard him. She heard it loud and clear. She didn't argue. She went home, quiet. But something different happened the next day. She didn't cry. She didn't quit. She built her own moving target rig from 2 lawnmower wheels, some fishing line, and a motor from an old fan. Her backyard sounded like a haunted carnival every night, targets swinging, bullets snapping, wind cutting through the trees. People in town talked. She's gone a little odd, hasn't she? They whispered. Her sister came by with soup one night. Eva, what's going on with you lately? You training for something? Eva just smiled. I'm training to remind people that silence doesn't mean weakness. She said it so softly it landed like a feather on fire. Then came the invitation. A wild card entry to the semifinals, likely added as a local novelty. She didn't care. She accepted. When she showed up again, Brock Tanner took notice. You. Again. He laughed. Look, I respect determination, but don't you think you're pushing your luck? Maybe leave the guns to the real shooters. She looked him in the eye. You shoot to impress? I shoot to remember. That made him pause. Only for a second. On the day she broke the record, the cameras finally noticed someone uploaded the video online to 3.7 million views in 24 hours. Who is she? Where did she come from? How is this possible? Old photos surfaced. One of her as a child, posing with her father in front of a wooden target. Another from a community rescue where she used a nail gun and a rope harness to pull 3. Children from a flooding attic during a tornado 15 years ago. Turns out Eva McKinney. It's always been a marksman. Just one that no one ever bothered to ask about. Brock Tanner, still smoldering with embarrassment, made a statement. She got lucky. Let's see if she can do it again, this time with the pressure on. He threw down a challenge. Head-to-head. The media ran with it. The Queen versus the King, then nobody who dared. David and Goliath with bullets. Eva didn't answer right away. She sat on her father's old porch swing, watching the sun melt behind the trees. She opened a notebook and wrote 4 words. Make it count this time. Her sister called. Eva, are you going to do it? Not about him. It's about everyone who never believed they could. If I don't stand up now, who will they look to? She walked to the mirror, tied her hair tighter, and whispered, let's give Em something to remember. The next morning, she called the organizers. I accept. When word spread, fans started pouring into the shooting range's website. Comment sections flooded with support. Young girls posted videos tagging her, mimicking her calm stance. One teenager wrote, she shoots like she's meditating. I want to be like that. She never replied. But she read every word. Then came the day of the finals. A new target lane, a new crowd. Even Brock looked nervous. Eva wore the same flannel, same jeans, same worn boots. But now, the room looked at her differently. Not as a joke, but as someone who had already done what few could ever dream of. She stood still at the edge of the lane, eyes closed, breathing slow. The announcer asked for silence. She loaded 12 bullets, 12 truths, and then, just before the buzzer, she whispered, for everyone they said didn't belong. Bang, 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 again and again. No flinch, no fumble. Out. People didn't cheer yet. They couldn't. They were holding their breath. Even Brock was motionless. The screen flickered. All 12 shots in the bullseye. Again, a second record. The place erupted. People screamed. Reporters dropped their cameras in disbelief. Brock stood, their fists clenched. She didn't smile, just nodded once, like a promise fulfilled, and walked away, because she never did it. For the applause, she did it for the little girl who still sits in her truck some nights, holding her father's old gun, whispering to herself that she matters even if no one sees her. That girl. She just made history, and she did it without shouting. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, laughed at, Told to stay quiet, this story's for you. Don't let the world decide what you're worth. Watch till the end, and if Ava's story moved you, if you felt something stir in your chest, then subscribe, because the next shot might just be yours. The sun cut through the blinds in lines across her wooden floor. Eva sat at her small kitchen table, stirring a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. In front of her sat the letter, the official confirmation, finals, Brock Tanner versus Eva McKinney, one-on-one showdown. The invitation was thick paper, gold embossing, a signature from the event board director. It looked like something meant for someone. It's fancier. She folded it slowly and slid it into her drawer, next to an old photo. Her and her dad on a hilltop laughing, him pretending to hold a slingshot like a sniper rifle. She missed that laugh, but she didn't cry. Not now. The house was still. Quiet. The kind of quiet that can feel like both peace and pressure, depending on what's inside you. Eva didn't need noise. She had memory. 2 days earlier, a man had shown up at her door in a polished car with tinted windows. He wore a smooth black jacket, his sunglasses perched on his head like he was halfway to an interview. He introduced himself as Cam. "Ma'am, I'm with Valor Shooter magazine. We'd like to do a feature on you before the match. Talk about your gear, your technique, maybe do a photo shoot." She nodded, polite but distant. He looked around her small cabin like he expected to find cobwebs and wild animals. "This is where you train?" "Yes." "Where's your practice room?" She opened the back door and pointed at the hill behind the shed, where an old tire hung from a tree and paper targets waved gently in the wind. Some stapled 2 planks, nailed to a crumbling fence. Cam blinked. "Where's your tech?" "I don't have any." He forced a smile. "Well, I guess that makes the story more interesting." He took a few awkward photos, then asked, "Do you ever get scared going up against someone like Brock?" Yeah, looked at him for a long moment. "No. I get scared of forgetting who I am." He didn't know how to respond to that. Most people didn't. The media storm was only growing louder. News segments ran headlines like, "The flannel legend, Eva McKinney returns, shoots like a ghost, talks like a monk, Brock's reign finally threatened." Brock Tanner didn't take it well. He posted a video in his studio, walls lined with medals, trophies, and neon backlights. His shirt bore his own initials in bold embroidery. "I respect all shooters, but let's be real, it's one lucky match. Doesn't make you a champion. Let's see how she holds up under real pressure. When it's her name in the spotlight, it's not a mystery anymore. Let's see if she cracks." The comments lit up. Some sided with Brock, defending his legacy, but more. They rallied behind Eva. "She's the real deal." Quiet storm. "My daughter's new hero." Eva didn't respond. She was already back in the woods, practicing, breathing, firing, loading, but something inside was starting to flicker. She wasn't nervous, not quite. But there was a new weight in her chest now. Expectation. The night before the finals, it rained hard. Thunder shook the windows of her small trailer. She stood by the counter, slicing apples in the dark, humming an old tune her father used to sing when storms rolled through. She couldn't sleep. At 3:12 a.m., she went outside, stood barefoot in the mud, lifted her arms. Let the rain hit her face. The sky didn't care about champions. The earth didn't care about medals. She let that truth steady her. But not all ghosts stay buried. As the match day approached, an envelope arrived. No return address. Handwritten, she almost tossed it. But something about the way her name was written made her stop inside. It was a photo, old, worn. Her father not just in the woods or with her, but standing with a group of people in front of a building that said Mountain Ridge Correctional Facility. Behind him, other men in gray, and in the corner, Eva squinted. That was her father, but younger. Angry, she turned the photo over. He wasn't always who you thought he was. No signature. Her hand shook. Just a little. She sat down, the photo in her lap, the past stirring like a hornet's nest. She'd known he'd had a past. He never hid it. He used to say, "I've seen dark days, Eva, but you make the sun come up again." Now, someone wanted her to question that, to second-guess the man who raised her to shoot straight, not just with a gun, but with her soul. She slid the photo into her boot and stood up. Whatever this was, whoever sent it, they were too late. He was her hero. Not because he was perfect, but because he chose to be better, and she would honor that. The finals were held at a private range, VI Poli access. Drones hovered overhead. Rows of cameras. The stands packed with fans, media, and brand reps. Eva walked in carrying the same old case. Her boots thudded on the polished floor, leaving faint dirt tracks. Brock was already there, giving interviews, stretching his arms like he was about to run a marathon. When he saw her, his smile twitched. "Didn't think you'd show," he said. She didn't reply. He stepped closer. "Hope you enjoyed your 15 minutes. Hope you're ready to lose in 4K. Eva simply adjusted the strap of her case. "I'm not here for the cameras, Brock. I'm here for everyone who was told they don't belong." It landed harder than he expected. He turned away. The announcer spoke into the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to the final showdown. Reigning champion Brock Tanner versus the challenger, Eva McKinney." Applause roared. They took their lanes. Cameras zoomed in, everything slowed. Even time seemed to hold its breath. Then, the buzzer. Brock fired first. Fast, aggressive, precise applause. Eva loaded. She didn't rush. She breathed. The first shot, bullseye second. Slight right, murmurs in the crowd. Third, perfect again. Fourth, low left. Something was off. She paused. Brock. SMI or KED. Then came the fifth. Just outside the bullseye, whispers turned to worry. People in the front row leaned forward. The legend was she's slipping. The announcer's voice cracked in tension. Like McKinney may be feeling the pressure, but then Eva closed her eyes and remembered her father's voice. "Don't shoot to win. Shoot to remember who you are." She gripped the pistol. Fired again. Perfect. Again, perfect. Again, again, again. 12 rounds total. The final 3? Flawless. The screen flickered. Her total, 117.25. Brock's, 118.10. He raised his arms. Victory, the crowd clapped, half-hearted. But Eva just stood there, still, peaceful. She walked to the bench and began unloading her gear quietly. Then someone shouted from the tech booth, Wait, there's a system error." One of McKinney's early rounds. The scoring didn't register properly. The range officers huddled. Tension snapped through the crowd like wire. After 5 long minutes, a judge stood up. Correction made. Final score, Eva McKinney, 120.0. Dead silence, then dash explosion. The crowd screamed. Some jumped, some cried. A little girl in the front row hugged her mom and shouted, "She did it." Brock dropped his pistol onto the bench. Eva didn't. Cheers, she just breathed and smiled for the first time. She let herself feel it. Later in the locker room, a man in a suit approached her. "Eva, I represent Liberty Arms. We'd like to offer you a contract, training videos, gear speaking, tours, maybe a book." She looked at the card in his hand. Then she looked out the window. "Can I think about it?" He looked surprised. "Sure, but with all due respect, this moment won't last forever." She turned to him. "That's the thing about real moments. They never leave you, whether people remember or not." He nodded slowly and walked away. That night, she drove back home. No fanfare. No parade, just the wind and the stars. When she pulled into her driveway, her sister was sitting on the porch swing. Eva sat beside her. Neither said anything for a long time. Finally, her sister whispered, "You did it."
Eva looked up at the sky.
"Didn't do it for me." "Then who?" Eva smiled. "For the girl who held her breath every time someone told her she wasn't enough. For the dad who taught me truth matters more than trophies. For every silent person who's stronger than they." "No." Her sister wiped her eyes. Eva reached down, took the old photo from her boot, and tossed it into the fire pit. Some people's truth doesn't need defending, it just needs living. If you've ever been told you're too quiet, too soft, too plain to matter, remember this. Eva McKinney didn't need a spotlight. She became the light. And if she could, so can you. Don't scroll past this. If your heart's been stirred. If her story made something ache inside you in the best way, subscribe. Because the quiet ones are never done. Surprising us, and her story isn't over yet. The headlines were everywhere. Eva McKinney dethrones. 5-time champion, rural nobody becomes. National icon, the woman who shoots with her soul in every photo. She was the same, calm, collected. Eyes like a quiet storm that had already passed through. She should have felt proud. Instead, she felt watched. 3 days after the finals, she was back at her trailer. The air smelled of pine and dust. Her flannel was draped over a wooden chair. She was sipping coffee when the phone rang. The voice was clipped. Corporate Eva, this is Trish from Federal Tactical. We're offering $80,000 for a 6-month brand deal. You'd be the new face of our women's rifle line. Before Eva could speak, the woman continued, you wouldn't have to shoot live, would just appear in a few staged competitions, wear our gear, say a few lines, we'll write them for you. Eva cleared her throat. What if I say no? And then, this industry forgets your name. She hung up. Didn't say goodbye. She stared out the window at the trees. They'd been standing quietly for longer than any camera crew had ever cared to notice. They were enough, but something had changed, and it was coming for her. That afternoon, she found her fence cut. The back line near the hill where she practiced had been slashed. Someone had walked across her property. She found cigarette butts near the stump she used for sighting drills. And next to the stump, a photo her standing at the finals only. It had been defaced. Red marker across her eyes. The word liar scrawled across her chest. She didn't flinch. She just picked it up, folded it twice, and slid it into her back pocket. But inside, something shifted. 2 nights later, the sheriff came by. Old friend, thick mustache, sad eyes. Eva, I got a call from a lawyer in Atlanta. Says they're looking into your father's criminal record. Eva set her coffee down slowly. Why? Is someone's accusing you of falsifying information on your shooter registration? Eva blinked. She knew what this was. She'd listed her father as a coach, a mentor, for emotional context, legal in every way. But someone wanted that name to mean something else. They're saying your dad served time, that you hid it. The sheriff lowered his voice. I know your dad. We all. Do you? He served his time, turned his life around, raised you right. But these folks don't care about truth. They care about noise. Eva stared out the window. First the photo, now this. Did they say who filed the complaint? The sheriff shook. His head? Anonymous. But she knew. She just didn't want to say it out loud. The next morning, she went to town to buy groceries at the checkout. A woman whispered to another, She's the one, right? The jailbird's daughter? Eva didn't look at them. She walked outside, quiet, until she saw the flyer posted on the bulletin board near the diner. A photoshopped picture of her father, mugshot style, and the words, THIS is who trained the new hero. Is she really what we want kids looking up to? No one had signed it, but someone had stapled it in 5 different places. She got home and sat at her table. For a long time, the old pistol lay in front of her, cleaned, oiled. Her hands touched the grip, like it was a lifeline. She didn't cry, but her jaw clenched tight enough to hurt, because this wasn't about shooting anymore. This was war, the kind that doesn't need bullets. Just whispers and fear and shame, and it was working. Later that night. Her sister called. Eva, you need to speak up. I don't want to play their game. This isn't a game anymore. People are starting to believe it. Eva was silent. Then her sister said something she didn't expect. Dad would have stood up. Eva's voice cracked barely. Dad didn't have cameras in his face. No. But he had you watching him, and he never let the world change him. You owe that to him, and to yourself. Eva stared at the dark trees through the window. A storm was rolling in. So was her answer. The next morning, she posted a video. No production, no makeup, no script, just her, on her porch, hair pulled back, wind rustling behind her. My name is Eva McKinney, and my father was an inmate. For 2 years. Before I was born, he made mistakes. Paid for them. Spent the rest of his life raising me with more integrity than most men ever touch. She looked directly into the camera. He taught me to shoot, to breathe, to listen. He taught me not to fight for trophies, but for truth. A long breath. You want to take my medals? They never mattered to me anyway. I shoot because it keeps me human. She stood, walked off camera. The video ended. Within an hour, it had 1.8 million views. By the end of the day, 10 million, and something incredible started happening. People began posting their own stories. My mom was a recovering addict. Taught me more love than any pastor. My dad was in prison. He's my hero. Thank you, Eva, for reminding us people are more than their worst chapters. #WeAreMore started trending. The silence broke, but this time, in her favor, sponsors pulled back quietly. But people stepped forward. A local teacher started a fundraiser to build a community shooting range in Eva's name. Little girl posted a video aiming a slingshot at a target and whispering, "I'm quiet like Eva." That one made her cry. But not everyone was done. Brock, he'd been silent. Until now, a week later, he published a 12-minute video titled, "The Truth Behind Eva McKinney." It was slick, edited, professional. He walked viewers through her scores, slow motion shots, even overlays of her breathing patterns. "She's good," said, "but too good." He hinted at unnatural groupings, possible assisted targeting, and then the kicker implied she might have used a hidden stabilization device inside her gun grip. He provided no proof, just suggestion. Doubt it spread like poison. Eva didn't react right away. Instead, she did something no one expected. She challenged him live. No tech, no gear, just woodstock pistols from the range. On camera. Uncut. "I'm not here to prove myself," she said. "I'm here to shut you up. For everyone who ever had to stay quiet while people like you ran their mouths." It rose, but it hit like a freight train. The internet went nuclear. Eva versus Brock. The rematch, raw, real, no excuses. It was set. The day arrived fast. No stadium, just a public range in the hills. One cameraman, no commentary. The deal was simple. 5 shots, 1 gun each. Raw footage. Closest spread wins. Brock showed up in tactical boots and a tight shirt, trying to look relaxed. Eva, same flannel. Ass! Same boots. Same face. The kind you trust when your house is on fire. They loaded. Brock fired. First, his grouping was tight. Good. Clean. Then Eva stepped up. She didn't even adjust the sight. She lifted the pistol, held her breath, and fired 5 slow, deliberate shots. The camera zoomed in. All 5 shots. It's touching. One ragged hole, slightly frayed. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't have to. The silence was her victory. Brock turned and walked away without a word. That night, Eva stood outside her cabin. Under the stars, her sister called, "He's done. You won." Eva looked up at the night sky, endless and soft. "I didn't win." "What do you mean?" "I just remembered who I was." The next morning, she found a letter on her porch. No return address. Inside, a note. "You didn't just shoot straight. You made us all breathe again. Thank you." No name, just a photo. A group of young women, all dressed in flannel, aiming together at a paper target. On the target, a message written in marker. Eva was here. She folded it, smiled, and put it in the same drawer where her dad's picture lived, because she was done hiding, and her story still had one more shot to take. If you've ever been dragged for someone else's mistakes, if you've ever felt crushed under a weight someone else put on your shoulders, then remember Eva. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She stood in truth. Let the wind carry it. The world's loud. But you don't have to be. You just have. To be solid, and if this part of her story touched you, then don't scroll past subscribe, because the final chapter is coming, and it's going to leave the whole world stunned. Eva stood at the back of the courtroom. Benches, soft murmurs, suits, ties. She wore no makeup. No blazer. Just her same flannel shirt, sleeves rolled up, collar still damp from the rain. She didn't want to be here, but sometimes life insists on a witness. The case was called McKinney v. United Sports Federation. The courtroom quieted. Journalists whispered her name like it had weight. Weeks earlier, they'd tried to strip her national ranking, said she hadn't disclosed sensitive personal associations code for her father's prison record. They'd waited for the world to move on, but the world didn't, because Eva didn't give it a chance to forget. She stood up, calm, steady, and the courtroom leaned in. The day before, she'd been offered a deal behind closed doors. Drop the claim, Eva. A federation. Rep had told her, "We'll restore your scores. You'll get a trophy in the mail. No press, no noise." Eva had stared him down. "You're not afraid of me. You're afraid of what I remind people of." He raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "That truth doesn't need packaging." And she walked out. Now she stood in front of a federal judge. Facing a room full of polished attorneys, her lawyer gave the opening remarks. Simple, honest. She never lied, never cheated. She was simply too inconvenient for a system built. On appearance, Federation's lawyers responded. Miss McKinney's background, while not criminal herself, created unnecessary controversy and misrepresented the integrity of our sport. The judge frowned. Then Eva was called. She stepped up to the stand, sat, folded her hands. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear her swallow. The attorney approached. "Miss McKinney, why didn't you disclose your father's criminal history in your application?" She took a breath. "Because I wasn't applying for him." Laughter from the back. The judge raised a brow, hiding a smile. The attorney shifted. "You listed him as a mentor." "He was. You didn't think that was relevant?" Eva leaned forward. "Let me ask you something." The attorney blinked. "You ever been taught something by someone the world told you not to trust?" He didn't answer. "My father made mistakes. He didn't deny it. But he gave me the only kind of guidance that lasts. Discipline, grace, and patience. Not for applause, not for medals. Because he believed I could be better than him." It turned to the judge. "I didn't become a shooter because I wanted a platform. I became a shooter because every time I aimed, I felt honest." Silence. Then the judge asked quietly, "Do you regret any of it?" She shook her head. "No, sir. I regret that the world still sees redemption as a stain." The judge looked at her for a long time, then nodded. "I've heard enough." The ruling came the next morning, the Federation's action overturned. Eva's record fully reinstated. The courtroom applauded. And yet, Eva didn't smile, because her victory didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release. She walked out of the courthouse, through the front doors, past reporters, cameras, microphones, and into the clean daylight. She didn't speak. She just looked up. Let the sun warm her face. Like her father always told her, "Keep your chin up, girl. That's where the light lives." But the story wasn't done, not yet, because what happened next was bigger than her. 2 weeks later, she got a letter, not typed, handwritten. It came on heavy paper, sealed with wax. She opened it at her kitchen. Tabled at, "Dear Ms. McKinney, on behalf of the President of the United States, we are pleased to inform you that you have been nominated to receive the Presidential Medal of Civic Honor in recognition of your courage, integrity, and demonstration of American values both on and off the range. Your story has sparked conversations in communities, classrooms, and courtrooms. You've reminded this nation that strength is not found in noise, but in truth, perseverance, and humility. Should you accept the ceremony, will be held this month, respectfully. Office of the White House, she, didn't move. She reread it 3 times, then folded it slowly, set it on the table, and walked outside. No tears, just breath, and the sound of wind in the trees, like applause from the roots of the earth. The night before the ceremony, she sat by her old stump with a thermos of coffee and a target tacked to the oak tree in front of her. It had holes in it from months of practice. She didn't aim tonight, she just looked, and remembered all the times she'd stood in this spot, all the evenings she doubted herself, the mornings she almost quit, the kids who now messaged her saying, "You gave me the courage to try." The women who said, "I finally felt seen," the fathers who whispered, "You reminded me I can change." She wasn't just a shooter, she was a mirror, and she knew this story wasn't just hers anymore. At the ceremony, she wore the same flannel, the same boots, but she pinned a small silver badge to her collar, her dad's old army sharpshooter. Medal given back to her by a retired friend who found it at a pawn shop. She stood on stage, next to war heroes, teachers, scientists. When they called her name, the crowd stood not just for her skill, but for her stillness. The president shook her hand and leaned in. "You're exactly the kind of quiet this country needs more of." She didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. That was enough. When she got home, she placed the medal in a wooden box her father made, right next to the old .22 pistol and the coffee tin of bullets she'd never used. Then she walked out to the range, hung a fresh target, picked up the pistol, and aimed. She didn't need to hit anything, not anymore, but she fired anyway. The sound cracked through the trees, not as noise, but as a reminder that truth still lives here, and always will. If you've been told you're too quiet to matter, if someone tried to make your past a prison, if they laughed at your simplicity, doubted your presence, or mocked your strength, then this story was always meant for you, because the world sees surface. But truth? Truth sees depth, and people like Eva, they don't fade, they echo. So if her story echoed in your chest, if it stirred something strong and still and sacred, then subscribe, because we don't tell stories to impress, we tell them to remind you. You were never small, you were just waiting for your moment to breathe and pull the trigger, and now it's your turn.